Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. I'm your co-host, Rich the Short Track Commissioner Maletto, joined as always the man, the myth, the legend, behind the curtain, except he's in front of the curtain, like he does every RaceGuru Thunder Hour. That's Sean Engel. You can find on X at Sean E247. That's SEAN, the fun, easy way to spell Sean. Sean, right. Welcome to the Guru Thunder Hour. I shouldn't say welcome. I mean, heck, it's your deal, man. I welcome myself here, right? But man, how's it going on this mid-race week? I'm a little ecstatic because we got a short track coming up, and you know how obsessed I am with short tracks, even though this new car has ruined it. But I'm still obsessed with short tracks. But I can't lie. We had a phenomenal race last weekend. But before we get into that, there's a lot of stuff going on at fantasyguru.com.
Yeah,
this podcast is brought
Let's
to you by. All right, this podcast is brought to you by fantasyguru.com and the Elite Plus Network. Please head over to fantasyguru.com. Click subscribe in the top right corner. Check out all the packages. We got a package for you. I'm confident of it. If we don't, go ahead and email support at fantasyguru.com, and tell them what you're looking for. But we have the March Madness basket deal. It's still going on. We're still making bets. I know brackets may be busted, but the great thing about today's world, we can bet on the games, and there is still a lot. There's Sweet 16. We got 8 games, and then we got 4 games, then we got 2 games, and we got the championship game. So there's lots of betting to be done. Head over to the website, check out the March Madness guide for $39.99. If you happen to like our content here, you can get all of our racing content with the MVP package for $79.99. They get you 12 months of everything that's not football or baseball. I think it gives you college and UFL, though, so I shouldn't say football. Doesn't give you NFL. Doesn't give you Major League Baseball. But it gives you about everything else, including Jorge Pucks on hockey and Fensty on basketball. And Arnie, I think, is still on soccer. And the bearded one I see dropping stuff. And Tyrod Taylor, right? Or Tyrod MGT. I see his name all the time. He's got MMA. He's got esports. T-Rod, you're money in places, bro. I got to admit, man, you really are. But we got it all for 12 months. And honestly, Sean, not to toot our own horn, but if you signed up for it like a month ago, we already won back your money on the NASCAR bets. We've already been told that by members who said, hey, thanks for the great week. I already paid for my membership for 3 years. So shout out to you.
I was going to say, even this past weekend with the Homestead bets, I posted a bunch of top 10 bets on Discord, about 8 of them to be precise, and 5 out of 8 hits. So
well done. I did not get them posted. The weekend got away from me. However, we did talk top 10 bets on this podcast last week, and I believe I went 2 for 3 on mine.
Yeah, I believe so. And the ones that I mentioned last week, too, particularly the ones about Alex Bowman, both hit, too, including that group winner that I shouted out last week as well.
We both pushed Dinger. We both pushed Bowman. I tell you what, Sean, when we both push people, I would say we bet at least 67%, if not 75%.
Yeah, I think that's a fair track record as it is. One more thing to mention regarding Fantasy Guru, you can also get the MLB draft guide available now, and that gets you everything, including all the content from the Oracle Ray Flowers, and he's got a lot lined up for baseball season. You're definitely going to want to check that out. Hit up support at fantasyguru.com in order to get the best possible deal that you can get. Be nice to them, and you know what? They may sweeten the deal for you.
I would say, be nice and polite. Don't be the folks that's all angry and whatnot, yelling at people trying to help you. You get a lot more flies with honey than you do vinegar. So just throw that out there. And I don't know Ted well, but I think he's a curmudgeon like myself, and I can speak from a curmudgeon's experience. Don't be cute and funny. It gets taken wrong sometimes. Be polite, and we got your back. Well, Sean, let's get into Miami. I got to admit, whether it was this car or the old car, Homestead remains my favorite 1.5-mile track. I have never considered it a cookie cutter track. It is a little bit different, even when you look at it, aerial view down, bird's eye view. That was the first track that I'm aware of that NASCAR ran at with progressive banking. It's why Las Vegas went ahead and brought in progressive banking, and it's why they tried progressive banking at Bristol. I don't mind Bristol with progressive banking. I like 2 wide racing and not shoving people out of the way, But most of the fans really preferred the Coliseum and the Wreckfest, and we don't have that now with the progressive banking. For folks that don't know, all the progressive banking is the degrees change as they go up the track. So it's 18 degrees, and then it gradually gets up to 20 degrees as you go up the track. From a layman's term, because I'm not the guy that designs the road or the engineer, Sean, it reminds me of dirt racing. You know, in dirt racing, it's all about finding that groove, high, low, where your car's working, how you drive, how the car works. All that stuff plays in. So having freedom to find a different lane is huge to be fast. Dude, we see slide jobs at Miami. We see them rip riding the top like you do at a dirt track. I thoroughly enjoy Miami. And I don't know about you, but I don't care which car it is, man. I am bummed that we don't go to Miami twice a year now.
Yeah, I wish that Homestead was around the NASCAR schedule more than once per year because racing's usually always been very good there. Even this past weekend, I thought it was pretty interesting overall to watch there too, and seeing how the race developed, especially at the end, was also it had me glued to the TV a bit, especially knowing that battle between teammates right at the end there with Bowman and Larson for the win.
That was great. Watching Larson run down Bubba, watching Bubba lead for a while, running that high line. That showed me a little something from Bubba. We've said for the last month or so, he's coming around. We're seeing improvements. We're seeing car speeds. The finishes are going to be there. He's going to be getting a win sooner than later. And you know what? His attitude matters. You could tell he was bummed and frustrated, but the way he spoke and the way he said it, it was a breath of fresh air seeing a Bubba Wallace interview where I wasn't rolling my eyes and wanting him to get off screen. You know what I mean? So hat tip to them. That was fun.
Crew chief.
Crew chief. I don't know if someone else got in his ear. Could be any number of things, Sean.
You and I are. Chief. He's talked about it actually.
Has he? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if Denny or MJ got in his ear at one point because a lot of those they won't admit those things. You know what I mean? Crew chiefs love to spill the beans on certain things. Like they won't tell you anything about the car setup. But when it comes to what they say to drivers and expectations, they have no problem laying it out there and being blunt about it.
Oh, yeah, because we know Bubba, he has a new crew chief this year, Charles Denicky, who he was the crew chief of Christian Eckes the past 2 years in the Truck Series and has since been promoted to Cup. And Bubba's talked about that him and Charles have gotten a different mindset adjustment for this year in order to focus on closing out races more and that not to dwell on the past mistakes and just keep looking forward. And I think the results are starting to show on track.
Well, and if that's the case, I didn't realize that because those Eckes trucks were fast almost everywhere. I mean, there were multiple races Christian Eckes didn't win that they had the best equipment. And that also tells me the crew chief has experience working with the young, I don't necessarily want to say immature because that's probably unfair, but unseasoned, driver. And he's able to bring that to, and I'll be the first to admit, there's more to crew chiefing than just being able to set up the car. Having chemistry with that driver, like we've all heard the milk and cookie story with Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson, right? And if Hendrick doesn't sit down with them and make them eat the milk and cookies, do we have what we got out of them, right? And I don't know how the two feel about each other now, but they definitely had chemistry when it came to the car. And I tell you what, I love Kyle Busch, but you don't see that with his crew chiefs. Like you talk to Jeff Gordon's former crew chiefs, whether it's Robbie Loomis, whether it's Steve Letarte, whether it's Ray Evernham, they all had chemistry with Jeff, So I think that stuff matters.
It does. And if you want to use Kyle Busch as an example, the closest he ever got to feeling that was with Adam Stevens. And that's only because they kept winning races a lot of the time.
Which, as you pointed out last week, Adam Stevens continues to build fast cars and continues to have top performing drivers, right? So
yeah, Christopher Bell.
Right. And Bell's on, it's funny because the guy at work is saying it's like a switch went off with Bell. Well, right there's a perfect example. The crew chief change. And we talk about it. Look, I track car chiefs, crew chiefs, competition directors, all these things because I think people matter. There's a reason, whether it's Joe Gibbs or Hendrick or Spire or anybody else, goes and poaches these other people and brings them into their organization. They feel like they bring something to the organization in a positive way, right? So, I don't know. I was pretty impressed with Miami. Hat tip to Kyle Larson. He got robbed on Saturday. but impressively done on Friday. I mean, talk about excitement, Sean. Did you catch much of the truck race?
I only caught some of it. I know that there basically was problems with Corey Haim's truck with the engine shutting off here and there, and then Larson drove all the way from the back to the front in order to get that win. So,
well, did you know why he drove from the back?
Elaborate a little more. I'm not sure if I got the full context.
He spun out.
There you go.
He spun out, and as OGB mentioned, he dropped. If you can catch a live line, he went from minus 130 to 12 to 1. And this is why we say when you've got drivers, and I don't know that OGB put a bet in at that time. I don't think he could, but he'd seen the bet. But this is why I really, really hate betting winners at plus 200, even plus 300 to minus numbers. I just really struggle with because Kyle Larson dominated on Saturday. He had the race won. It was a done deal. And then with 8 or 6 laps to go, 8 to 6, somewhere around that range, caution came out. Well, on the restart, Sam Mayer got a little aggressive and got into the back of Kyle Larson trying to push him and got Kyle up off the ground.
And it didn't help that Larson spun the tires a little bit too at the same time.
I think he did. I think part of the reason Mayer got under him was because he spun the tires. And he didn't admit to spinning the tires, but he admitted he knew he was in a tough spot because they had a longer run car, not a short run car. And we were only going to get 2 laps. But he had it with 10 to go, folks. He had such a massive lead that I don't even know if Vegas would have taken bets. It was probably minus 500 at that time, only to see Justin Allgaier pull it out, right? I mean, and it was funny to say Allgaier would be like, well, I kind of feel bad I took away, Kyle's shot at a sweep because I think he could do it. But, I mean, he hustled on Friday and hat tip to Kyle Larson. This is his favorite track. We talked about it. He runs so well here. It is very dirt-like. I'm shocked that Bell doesn't run better here consistently for as dominant as Kyle Larson is. But overall, if we had 1.5 mile racing like this, Sean, I never would have griped about the 1.5 mile racing. And I know at one point in the Xfinity race, we only had 6 cars on the lead lap.
That was right at the very end.
I still found it enjoyable, man. Like how many cars on the lead lap didn't matter. There were still storylines being played out.
Yeah, you could even talk about the storyline of Connor Zilic coming back from that penalty to get inside the top 10 there.
Good call out. I mean, that was – and how impressed are you with that young man so far, dude?
He's got some skill, I tell you that. He knows how to wheel a car.
Here's a name to write down, too. Wyatt Miller.
Oh, yeah, I know about Wyatt Miller. Got some interesting racing blood behind that name right there. So I'll say that much.
He's 13 years old, okay? He entered his second super late model event ever and won. Now, granted, he qualified on the pole. The guy outside pole passed him with 20, 30 laps to go. The guy ended up blowing a motor, okay? But to hop in a super late model is your second time at 13 years old. Take it to a win. I'll give you second place even. It's worth noting. And oh, by the way, his grandfather is Dale Earnhardt Sr.
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to right there with that interesting racing blood, While
he doesn't have, Kerry Earnhardt, Jeffrey Earnhardt look like Dale Sr., I hate to break it to him, they don't drive like Dale Sr. This young man, Wyatt, he might drive like Dale Sr., and I comes to find out his dad also did some racing. Didn't have much success or do much in trucks or Xfinity, but he did race a little bit of NASCAR and did win in 2008 what is now, I believe, the Menards West Series. I think it is. L.W. Miller's his name.
Wyatt,
L.W. Miller. And so anyway, just look, I know we're racing geeks, but when we tell you about the Nick Sanchez's and the Corey Haims and everything, we get all excited. That's because we're geeking out on watching them at 12 and 13 years old whoop up on grown-ass men and women.
Oh, yeah, and you could also perhaps mention Brexton Bush to that list, too. He's going to be racing his father very soon for the first time.
Today, isn't it tonight at Millbridge? I believe tonight at Millbridge, Brexton and Kyle are entered in the same dirt race. And look, Brexton's winning, okay? The name you haven't been hearing much about that is also winning, Keelan Harvick.
Yeah, Keelan Harvick. You want to talk about all these kids of drivers there too? We might as well also eventually add Owen Larson to that list too.
I would say, don't forget Owen Larson. Don't forget Owen Larson. Yes, yes. So we look from a skill and standpoint, star standpoint, Sean. I'll be the first to admit, NASCAR has a bright future. There is a lot of young talent coming up. Whether or not there's enough quality equipment, it remains to be seen. And in all fairness to NASCAR, the point of this car is to do that, right?
Yeah, that is the point they're trying to go for.
So I think Kyle Busch is hoping to race against Brexton in NASCAR at some level. I think he's even announced that as a goal. Obviously, Kevin Harvick won't be doing that. Kyle Larson, maybe. I mean, I don't, he wants to go down as one of the greatest all-around racers, and he's going to have to be racing a while to catch Tony Stewart in that regard because he hadn't even taken a wheel of an NHRA run yet.
Nah, you are correct about that. But, if we're talking about just the dirt aspect, I mean, he's well on his way, as we know.
Yeah. And I was impressed with his Indy run. I know other people can mock it, but I thought he did a great job, especially for a dirt guy, I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of dirt guys that win Indy 500 racing over the years. Granted, that was the 80s, but, going fast on four wheels, Sean, while we make all these technical changes to the cars, when it really comes down to it, you need to keep all four wheels on the racing surface for the most part. Dirt, that's debatable. I get it. And you need to figure out a fast way around the track. And you need to not break the equipment. None of that has changed in the 100-some-odd years of racing, right? So,
pretty much. I mean, you couldn't have put it any better right there.
Well, do you have any other thoughts to Miami? I mean, I could talk Miami for days because I enjoyed it. It reminded me of old school NASCAR, but we got a lot of other info to get to. So,
yeah, there isn't really too much more to really add when it comes to Miami there. I am going to give a hat tip to Alex Bowman for running as well as he did during that entire race. And really, if he didn't just get into the wall too much there at the end, this would have came down to like maybe 2 to go in order to have a pass happen between Larson and Bowman.
He totally choked and he knew it. I mean, he straight up admitted, I choked that one away. And in all fairness to Bowman, I get it, dude. Tony Stewart was a bottom feeder. He admitted it openly. Larson is high, wide, handsome all the time. That Joker wants to run high everywhere. So, one, he's had a lot of practice. Two, I guarantee you the car is more set up for it. Bowman was actually doing okay on the bottom. I think he may have been better off staying a bottom feeder instead of trying to rip ride it like he did and just, come up and rob that air from Larson on exit. It was really going to force Larson, I think, to overdrive or stay in it. But I think Bowman's putting a little bit of pressure on himself. There's so much scuttlebutt about he's not deserving of that ride at Hendrick and everything else. Applaud Jeff Gordon for his response about that, right? I mean,
yeah.
And I especially, what did he say, Sean? Something to the effect, he's our guy, or
he's our guy.
He's our guy.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it was something along those lines. Alex Bowman's not old. Is he sexy like Kyle Larson from a racing standpoint? No, but was Matt Kenseth or Mark Martin?
Nah, they weren't exactly that flashy. And I am going to say this much, too. People like to talk about Bowman as the number 4 driver, but he's doing about as well, if not better, than Chase Elliott is right now.
I was just going to say, in all fairness, take pricing out of it because pricing plays into it. Who are you more likely to play on any given week at any given track, Bowman or Chase Elliott?
Usually most weeks it's been Bowman just because the pricing has been more favorable to him and he gets similar kinds of results.
I would say, but I'll even take the pricing out. I'm at the point I have more confidence turning to Bowman than I do Chase Elliott. I don't know what's missing from Chase. I don't know if it's a crew chief thing. Bowman is like Bubba. The speed's been there. Maybe the finishes haven't quite. He got kind of robbed of that Xfinity win. He's got another couple of wins coming here. I firmly believe Alex Bowman's going to get locked into the playoffs over the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, he's got a chip on his shoulder, and so does his crew chief, Blake Harris, as well, because I'm sure if Blake Harris doesn't make that 4018 perform up to the standards that they're looking for, he may be on the hot seat as a crew chief.
Yeah, but I got to believe the car's there. I'm not dogging Bowman, but imagine if we put Larson in that 48 car. I think it's probably winning races, Sean.
Oh, yeah. Definitely for sure. Before we move on, I'm just going to shout out a few other drivers that had some pretty solid days here, too. We have Chase Briscoe in 4th there, too. We didn't talk much about him, but he finally had a good day. Chris Buescher in 6th. AJ Allmendinger keeps his top 10 streak alive with the 7th place run. And also 3 other names that I'm going to shout out here, too. Ryan Preece ended up getting his back-to-back top 10s with the 9th place run, and Justin Haley in 10th. And then right behind him, Zane Smith ended up finishing 11th. So he had a very good run. His odds in order to finish in the top 10 were around plus 700, and he was 1 spot shy of doing that there.
I was too chicken to list him, and I'm glad I was too chicken to list him because I would have been pissed that we got caught on the hook like that, right? But look, Carson Hocevar, Zane Smith, Riley Herbst, all 3 of these guys for this week, Cole Custer, Chase Briscoe, all these guys the books have been kind of down on, and Chase not so much. The books have been a little more warm. I think they are expecting that 19 car to be more, right? But there's no love for the John Hunter Nemecheks, the Carson Hocevars, and the Zane Smiths. And I got to tell you, Sean, at times, all of them have shown good speed.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Well, should we move on to news for the week?
Yeah, let's get right on into it here. Let's first of all talk about the driver announcement that just recently occurred here for the Cup Series. We have Austin Hill returning back to the Cup Series for 5 races this year with Richard Childress Racing. Now, they made it clear about which of the 5 races they are. It's going to be a 3rd RCR entry at Darlington, the Chicago Street Course, Daytona in August, Bristol in September, and Talladega in October there, Rich.
He's so good at those super speedways, man. And RCR typically is too. Like, that's going to be interesting to see. I won't be shocked if he's making noise in a couple of those races. I'm curious to see him run at Bristol. He's been up and down at Bristol, been fast in the past and not so much at others. And honestly, he's kind of an underappreciated road course racer. I mean, we saw that at COTA. So I really dig that they did this. Darlington is notoriously difficult. I'm glad they did this. These are a good 5. This is a good tester of what kind of driver Austin Hill is. And what's going to be interesting to me is I'm going to be watching Austin Hill versus Austin Dillon.
Oh, yeah. I think that's going to be really worth watching to see right there. Also of note, which is interesting because I think this should be pointed out too about this announcement. But Austin Hill is going to have his former Xfinity crew chief, Andy Street, with him for all 5 of these races as well, too.
Now, was Street with him last year or the year before?
Street was with him for all the other years except for this year because he just changed crew chiefs in Xfinity.
Okay, so all the success and speed he's had the last couple of years in Xfinity was with
Andy Street.
This is good.
Yeah.
This is good. This is good for him. This is a good tester. Let's put the toes in the water and see what we got. I like Austin Hill. I love how blunt he is, how open he is. He's a little aggressive. He's my kind of driver in many ways.
I think this is overall a pretty interesting announcement. I'm looking forward to see how he does on these tracks. And he's bringing United Rentals with him as the sponsor for all these races. And they're going to be sponsoring a few other races of Austin Dillon and Kyle Busch this year.
Good deal.
So getting into the next one, we're going to discuss a little rumor here that's been going around. Homestead Miami could be back as the 2026 championship finale, but Las Vegas could be the 2027 finale. Now, this rumor comes to us courtesy of the Door Bumper Clear podcast, where they actually kind of discussed about this a little bit, about this possibility happening as it is with Homestead being back for 26 and in Vegas being back for 2027 there. What are your thoughts on this, Rich?
I think there's more than just a rumor, because I read about it. It was actually the city planning, mayor, all of that was openly lobbying for this to take place. Look, I love Miami. I enjoyed it as the finale in the past. It used to be the finale for, I don't know, Sean, 15 years, 20 years. It was a staple for quite a few years. I know there's Bruton Smith, and I know he's no longer with us, but Bruton Smith always wanted a finale at Vegas. His grand scheme was to have the finale at Vegas, and then the very next weekend do the awards banquet there in Vegas, right? So logistically, I think both make a lot of sense. Miami's not far from Daytona. It's a bit of a haul for the teams, but it's the last race of the year. We're bound to get good weather. Well, better weather than, say, if we try to run it at Martinsville or Pocono or something like that. Vegas really should be the same. I'd be fine with it, because as far as 1.5-mile ovals go, which is the bulk of our schedule, I would argue those are the best two on the schedule.
Yeah, those are two of the best ones for sure. I definitely like the idea of Vegas being the finale potentially. We even saw the race at Vegas earlier in the year was actually pretty solid overall too. Right. So, you know what? I'm kind of for this move. And
get it off of Phoenix. Get it off of Phoenix. That's please, all I'm asking.
Please.
And no offense, Phoenix. It's just I haven't enjoyed racing there in a long time, man. And Richmond's the same way, sadly. The excitement track, maybe a tire. Maybe we get there in a better tire. Maybe this ends up being the best finale ever in Phoenix, Sean, and we go, well, shoot. Maybe we don't need to move it to Miami. But I for one, would be all for the move to Miami. Maybe we'll call up 100%. DFS Marlin and go to a race then. We'll go to the championship race with them. What do you say?
Ooh, that sounds fun. I'm totally in for that. Totally in for that idea.
Perfect time of year too, right? November?
Yeah, exactly. One other thing that I am going to point out there too, and I've seen this online as well, but the Homestead Miami website, actually, we're already starting to kind of show pre-orders for 2026 in November on their website already too.
Boy, someone's getting a little presumptuous, aren't they?
I wish I could have grabbed a screenshot
before. Yeah, I would say, tell me you haven't worked with. I believe it. I'm just saying, tell me you haven't worked with NASCAR before without telling me you haven't worked with NASCAR before.
Oh, man. Either way, I hope this happens, because we need Phoenix away and we need Miami back in.
The fact that Miami, we go to Charlotte, well, I guess it's the Oval, so it's not the same, Roval. We go to enough tracks twice. It's a real shame Miami's not one of the tracks we go to twice. Look, either go to all of them one time, or let's make sure when we go back a second time, they are creme de creme. I'm not a big, super speedway guy, but I can't deny Talladega and Daytona fit that bill, right? Yep. Bristol fits that bill. Well, Martinsville used to fit that bill. I would say Darlington. Well, heck, going back, Darlington used to only be run on Labor Day weekend. It wasn't until they tried to kill the race and move it to Mother's Day, and then it turned into, holy crap, we need to have Darlington twice now again. So
yeah, as a product of having probably one of the greatest finishes, if not maybe the greatest finish ever in NASCAR history, right there.
That photo finish 3 wide Atlanta was great. Don't get me wrong. We have had some other great finishes, but in my opinion, I'm with you. The greatest finish in NASCAR history, at least that I got to see and watch, was Kurt Busch and Ricky Craven. That the whole storyline with one coming, one wearing down, holding the tires, them getting, and they didn't wreck each other. Like, they got into each other, but there was no hooking. There was no driving them into the wall. It was, I'm trying to rub speed. I mean, I don't know we'll ever get a finish like that again, man.
Rich, are you familiar with the YouTuber Slap Shoes?
I'm not.
So I got to recommend you this too, and shout out to Slap Shoes if he ever happens to be watching this, but he did a video on that exact race let me just tell you, it is quality viewing right there. He brings up the whole storylines and explains it in such a way that it's actually really compelling. And we're seeing, even if you've seen the finish already, worth watching.
And see, this is what I'd love to tell NASCAR. That race was quintessential NASCAR, okay? I don't care how many cars were on the lead lap. Go back. I should go back and look at the race. I bet you less than half the field was on the lead lap, all right? Tires and fuel were part of the storyline. Maintaining tires and having fuel. They were part of the storyline, as was speed. We've lost all of that with these stage breaks, this car and tire. So if you want quintessential NASCAR, I know they want these great photo finishes, and that's all fine and good. But, Sean, how many times have we talked about the finishes were great, but the races were not? That whole race was fun to watch. There were so many storylines that were playing right.
You could even mention the part where people don't talk about enough too, and that's Dave Blaney chasing them down in the third position.
That's right.
Too.
That's right. I forgot about that part of it because he was kind of licking his chops going, these idiots are going to wreck each other.
He was catching them too. If he had maybe another 5 to 10 laps, he would have got them both.
The only other race that I remember having as much fun watching throughout the whole race and the end was Watkins Glen. Marcus Ambrose, Brad Keselowski.
Oh, 2012.
Was it? Yeah, 2012. Was it Kyle Busch?
Yeah, Kyle Busch spun on the last lap, and then it ended up being a showdown between Ambrose and Keselowski for the win, with Ambrose winning it.
Yes. That race, I kid you not, Sean, I was standing in my living room yelling and pointing at the TV because I was blown away by what was going on. I mean, that is the only other race I can think of that the finish is even on par. And here again, neither of them were well, I guess Darlington was a bit of a photo finish.
Darlington was a photo finish.
We didn't necessarily need the photo because when they got into each other, we saw how they were crossing the line, but it was, so close. Watkins Glen wasn't, but man, those were, I hope we get stuff like that again, bro.
That being said, I will say this about Watkins Glen, though. Last year's race at Watkins Glen kind of got at least a little bit close as far as the finish was concerned with that between Chris Buescher and SVG.
That's fair. That was cool.
That was a great finish.
That was a great finish. And Watkins Glen really does put on some good races, man. I'm glad they got rid of the boot. The boot, all the track naturalists, I get it. But guys, the open wheel cars handle differently. So, understand that. Like Dale Jr. said about Coda, hacking off that mile, what's it really going to do? He went from hating going to Coda to, man, that was a really fun race. Watkins Glen's the same way. I never liked road course races until I really watched a few Watkins Glen one, and then it was like, man, this can be a good show. Like this is fun.
Yeah, it certainly is fun. But you know what? We could talk about Watkins Glen and great racing all day, man. But we got some other stuff we got to cover here.
Valid.
So this next thing that I put down on our rundown isn't exactly a news story, but just kind of, how last week we talked about different facts and different statistics and all that. Now, NASCAR.com, they posted an article over here that was all about drivers with the biggest gains and drops in average finish in 2025. I don't know if you saw this, Rich, but I found this to be very compelling and very interesting overall, especially from the statistical perspective. And we can see all the differences between how drivers have performed from 1 year ago to now at this point in the season. So did you take a look at this yet?
I had not. I did not see that. And now I'm intrigued, Sean. So I'm hoping you can give me some cliff notes in a quick version of it.
So I'll run it down here too. I'll go through the list real quick here. So they first gave us William Byron. His average finish through the first couple of races, through the first 6 races of the last season was 13.7. 2025, his average is now 8.7. So that's a 5 position increase right there.
Pretty big, especially when you're already top 15 to begin with.
Yeah. Next on the list is Ricky Stenhouse Jr. His average.
He had to go backwards.
Actually, I'll tell you this. His average finish through the first 6 races in 2024, 22.7. 2025, 17.3. A gain of 5.3.
That is shocking to me. I never would have guessed that because I feel like he's gotten worse this year.
He's in the top 20 in the standings, too. He's 19th currently.
He's doing better than I thought. I've had a blind spot, and some of it's because I know I like him as a person. I've met him, and I speak very highly of him and his dad, and I know he's got a reputation of Recky Spinhouse, but I think it's overstated. So I try to keep my fandom out of it, and I may have created a blind spot, Sean. That is really good info to have right there because he is historically a cheap punt option.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And you know what? He's been paying out in some of the races this year. He's been gaining positive place differential overall. So, hat it to Ricky. All right, getting into the next driver on the list, we have Austin Cindric. I mean, considering how he's actually been running, this should not come as a shock. No. But
10 spots?
2024, his average finish was 23.3 through the first 6 races. This year, it's 17.5, so a 5.8 position gain.
Feels like 10.
After that, there's Justin Haley. He through 2024, his average finish was 25.5 through the first 6 races, and then now this year it's 19.5, 6 position gain.
Not a good enough, though. I've expected more from him and that team, to be honest.
Yeah. Although, compared to 1 year ago, he was driving in Rick Ware equipment, and now he's with Spire equipment. So, that you could expect at least some sort of bump up, I'd say.
Right? That's what I'm saying. I've kind of wanted more from Mr. Haley and Rodney Childers.
So, then there's Josh Berry. His average last year through the first 6 races is 24.5. This year, 18.3, so a 6.2 position increase.
I would have thought it was more yet. Because I feel like he's top 10, top 15 every week.
Yeah, he's certainly feeling that way for sure. Then we have Zane Smith. His average through the first 6 races of 2024 was 28.0. Through the first 6 races this year, 19.8, so an 8.2 position increase.
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
Hat tip to the soccer club, right? He's with the soccer club, isn't he?
No, Zane's with Front Row this year.
Oh, that's right. He's with Front Row. That's right. My bad. Hat tip to Front Row.
Yeah. Then the article itself goes into drivers that have dropped for compared to last year.
Joey Logano, number 1.
They did not actually cover Logano in the article, surprisingly, as far as I see.
Sissies. They were afraid to ruffle the feathers.
First on the list was Bubba. His average through the first 6 in 2024 was 17.5. This year it's 19.7, so a minus 2.2 position increase, despite being 7th in the Cup Series standings right now.
So I'd like to caution folks. This is where we got to be careful with data sample size. Bubba has noticeably, I don't think this is even debatable, Sean. You can argue with me if you want, noticeably been faster this year. We have seen his car in or near the top 10 more through the first 6 races this year than we have, I think, in any other time. But we've also both noted he hasn't gotten the finishes where he's run. Whether it's been the guy that wrecked in front of him that took him out, whether it was the brake issue, whether it was the tire, things outside of his control for the most part have impacted this. So this is where you got to be careful. Sean and I try to point you on speed. Why? Because speed wins.
Yep.
Luck, bad luck, good luck, it eventually runs out. It eventually swings the other way. But this is a great example of this data is a little misleading to me, Sean, because I feel much better about Bubba's this year than I did last year.
As do I. Continuing on with the list, we have Daniel Suarez next. He, in 2024, what was that, Rich?
I said same thing with Suarez. He's been way faster than the finishes.
Yeah. Average finish of 18.0 last year through the first 6 races. This year, it's 21.5, so minus 3.5 positions.
I mean, 3 positions isn't a lot. it is, but it isn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. Now, continuing onward, we have Brad Keselowski next. Through the first 6 races of last year, 19.8 average. This year, it's 25.0, so minus 5.2 positions. He is currently 30th in the standings.
Ugh. Dude.
Yeah.
That's not ideal.
No, not at all. Brad's not gotten a lot of good performance out of that 6th team this year so far.
The whole team has struggled. I mean, the one that's looked the best has been Priest, and the second has been Buescher. And because I noticed today, Brad led a lot of laps here last year, right? And had an okay finish. And I made a comment to myself, I feel like I don't know if the addition of the third team taxed him a little bit. You know what I mean? Because I feel like they're behind.
Well, on top of that, Brad has a new crew chief this year, too.
Oh.
Yeah,
what happened
because
to the old one?
Matt McCall is no longer with the team, and instead he brought in Jeremy Bolins, who used to be a part of Team Penske and Wood Brothers.
Oh, yeah, but that may have been the wrong call. I'm just saying. I mean, I would argue Penske's looked better since Mullins, and RFK has not looked better since Mullins. Like, this is where I think it matters, where the people, because in all fairness, the Wood Brothers look way better this year.
And they got an entirely new crew chief on the top of the box there with Miles Stanley, who used to be a Penske engineer.
Right. Again, engineer, it pays to track competition, crew chief, team engineer. You guys would be shocked at the names I try to follow, Sean too, where they go and what their positions are, because we could tell you they're a blah, 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 and you'd be like, I don't even know what that is. Honestly, we don't either, other than we know they have impacts on how the car gets set up. So when you take that knowledge and go somewhere else with it, guess what? You take what's up here with you. They can't make you not, right? Just like Randy Dorton lost one of his back. This goes way back before he died, obviously. Lost one of his main guys. Well, then when Randy died, they got behind. Meanwhile, where the young guy that's been up and coming got hired away, that team started succeeding. There's information and knowledge that even non-competes, they've ruled in the courts, they can't make you unlearn stuff. So interesting. Well, Brad, I hate to break it to you, bro. Maybe you made the wrong call. It's early.
Yeah, it's still early. It's still early as it is, but I'm pretty sure Brad made the call to bring him in because Jeremy Bolins did not want to be around Team Penske and Wood Brothers anymore, and he wanted to connect back with Brad, who he had some of his best seasons with Brad when Brad was at Penske before.
Yeah, but times have changed, and Penske.
That was with the old car, though, too.
Right, times have changed, and why did you not want to be with Penske? There's not too many people that speak negatively about that organization, unless maybe he was working too much Joey Logano. I could understand why he'd want to leave.
I think they had him working with Wood Brothers within the last year or two, and then, as we know, being in Wood Brothers the past 3 years may not have been healthy for anybody's mind.
Well, and again, okay, so that goes back to, I'm connecting dots here, Sean. Wood Brothers this year, Wood Brothers last year, where was dude at? Like, I tend to be more like, remember last year when the Rick Ware Racing was doing well?
Yep.
If you had told me that the competition director or one of the team engineers or something like that went to, I don't know, Front Row or Gibbs, you know what I'm saying? Like, I would have been like, all right, what was it? This dude knew something, or she knew something, because this is more than we've seen from Rick Ware ever, right? So, and instead with Wood Brothers, it's like, what happened to the golden years? Even when Paul Menard was there, we had better success, right?
Yeah, Menard was at least had his consistency at times,
right,
in order to maintain some pretty decent finishes. But you bring up an interesting point there with Rick Ware last year. You know who the crew chief of that Rick Ware team last year was, right, Rich? It was Chris Lawson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Chris Lawson, who used to be in the Truck Series, then he went up to Cup to join Rick Ware. He made that team look about as good as it's ever been. And you know what happened to him? He got poached by Front Row Motorsports this year and is now working with Zane Smith.
Oh, you mean one of the guys that we talked about that has made significant movements forward. Shocker. Rick Ware improves and they poach a guy and we're seeing similar improvements. This, Sean, for fantasy players that are watching this that like football, Jeff Mann preaches this. I'm the same way.
Actually, hold on a second. It's not Zane Smith. It's Todd Gilliland he's working with. My bad.
Even still, Gilliland has been better this year overall. And it's made both teams better. My point being is coaching and schemes matter for football. Crew chiefs matter for racing. And that's partly why I'm so disappointed in Justin Haley and Rodney Childers. I have a lot of high hopes for Childers. We've seen him have success and build fast cars. It's why when Brian Patty comes in as a once-in-a-while one-off in some of these roles, I get excited. Same thing with Darian Grubb, because these guys have historically always found a way to put fast cars on the track. They got tired of the grind and the burnout and all that. We need to come up with a cheat sheet list for I've got an idea. I'm going to come up with a cheat sheet.
I was going to say, while you have that cheat sheet idea, actually, there was an article that I wrote for fantasyguru.com at the very beginning of the season there, where I listed off all the different crew chief changes that have since happened over the offseason there. So if you wanted to get a good idea for some of the changes and how you can see the results play into it now, you can go forth and look back at that article over on fantasyguru.com in order to see that there.
That was a fantastic article. And I hate to be mean, Sean. I want to go further. I want crew chief, team engineer, competition director. I don't want to get in the weeds, but tire changers, jackman, fuel man. Like, I want to name some of the names at the shop we never hear about, right? Like, these guys move all around from team to team. It happens. It's been like that forever. But I don't even know how to track some of this, to be honest with you, Sean. You did an excellent job on the crew chiefs, but I would argue that's a third of the story?
Well, as far as I tried looking up for car chiefs, but finding that information is way tougher than a crew chief.
No, I've done the same thing. I've done it for crew chief. I've done it for team engineer. I have tried to get a depth chart from the teams. It ain't one that maybe HR has something like that. I don't know, but no, it's not. And that's what's unfortunate, because for football, when an offensive coordinator leaves, it matters. A defensive coordinator leaves, it matters. Head coach leaves, it matters. But all three are important.
Yeah, indeed they are. I'm going to wrap up the list here real quick and put a bow on it. There were only 3 drivers left to cover. Ross Chastain, he went from 10.0 last year to 17.8 through the first 6 races this year, minus 7.8. Ryan Blaney, he was 11.3 through the first 6 races 2024. He went to 21.5 this year, minus 10.2. And then lowest on that list is Ty Gibbs, who was 7.8 through the first 6 races this year and is 25.7 through the first 6 races this year, minus 17.8 positions. If you want to see more of that article, you can go over to NASCAR.com in order to see that right there. So pretty interesting article. Check it out there if you haven't.
The funny thing is, the guy with the biggest drop is probably the guy with the safest seat.
Yeah. It's crazy. Really
Ty Gibbs ain't going anywhere, folks. I'm just letting you know. He ain't going anywhere.
No. Not
there will be other people fired before Ty Gibbs goes anywhere.
That unless the ownership group becomes so different that it's no longer associated with the name Gibbs.
Even then, I give it 3 years before they fire him. And look, I had high hopes for Ty Gibbs. There's something else going on, because that 54 car has not been anywhere near the other 3 cars. The 19's been fine. The 11's shown speed at times. Christopher Bell's been lights out. Something is going on. And this goes back to last year. Remember the chocolate milkshake pouring out of the tailpipe like 3 different times at the end of last year?
Yeah, and yeah, it's just wild what Ty Gibbs is going through, because this has definitely been the worst slump of his career by far.
Oh my gosh, it's not even close, right? I mean, this guy wanted everything coming up. Dominated ARCA, dominated Xfinity, he dominated everything he's come up in until now.
Yeah, I don't think it's a question of driver talent as it is just the team doesn't seem to have it.
No, they're missing something.
And I'm not even sure I could necessarily say it's a crew chief thing because this dates back all the way to last season when he had Chris Gale as his crew chief. And Chris Gale works with Denny Hamlin now, and Ty Gibbs now has Tyler Allen, which I know Allen is completely new to the Cup Series because he's just been an Xfinity crew chief for the past few years. But, man, talk about a lot of adjustment that needs to go down before that 54 can show winning speed again.
Maybe it's the number because Taylor Gray's been disappointing in Xfinity in the 54 too, and a lot of it hasn't even been his fault.
The difference is with Taylor Gray, though, is at least Taylor Gray's in a position where he can be in the playoffs if the playoffs started today. He scored enough points. That 54 team in Cup, they're not even anywhere close to doing
that. Well, should we get into the drivers for this week's events then, Sean?
Yeah, you know what? Let's get into our Martinsville preview. And you know what? There's one thing that has to be said because we're going to Martinsville.
Short track racing.
There you go.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy.
It's short track racing time.
Short track racing. For a little quick synopsis, back in the day, when drivers were mad at each other, they just waited till we got to short tracks, and then they unleashed the fury on each other. Tempers would be flaring. Nowadays, they just wreck each other wherever. We don't quite see the same tempers, although with this car, it's nearly impossible to pass at Martinsville. This has been a noticeable thing. Although Denny Hamlin called us a liar when he passed, 32 cars to get up to fifth place. So, look, the bottom line, Sean, right? Dominators, because of all the laps, be leery of even the punt options, be leery of going too far in the back. You're going to want balance with place differential, but don't get greedy with it. I would much rather take a shot at trying to guess at 2, 3, or 4 dominators, even if it's a couple of mid-tier guys, than I would be looking for place differential.
Oh, absolutely. This is totally the track where you're going to want to make sure you have dominators because this is not the easiest track in order to make passes. Even if we were in the previous car, it still was always a challenge in order to make passes. You can argue it's even more of a challenge now. So drivers that stay at the front tend to stay there for long periods of time. And we've seen that in the past couple of years. So we're going to want to make sure to have those dominators. And heck, even just drivers that are going to maintain a high finishing position, they're likely going to be starting within the front half of the field anyway, which means if you're playing a GPP-based tournament, you may want to even consider some guys that are starting just purely off speed in the top 15 or so, and they may just stay there. And that they're going to carry low ownership as a result because you know what? People might not be willing to play those drivers that are going to be risk for place differential in that regard.
So out of the last 4 races, which obviously have been in this car, Sean, only one of them we didn't have someone, at least one person, and I think it may have been 2 in all of them, except for one of the 3, led 100 laps or more. That race that didn't, you may have to correct me, but Sean, I want to say, I'm going off of memory, I think that was a rain-shortened or weather-shortened event.
I think that's plausible. I want to say that there was a Martinsville race that I think that did get delayed due to rain.
Right. So, because after I looked at it, I was like, man, this is shocking. And then it dawned on me afterwards, like, I swear we had one of these last 4 was a rain-shortened event. Point being is, most of them, we did see at least one, not usually. We saw at least one, if not 2 drivers leading 100-plus laps. There's 400 laps in the Cup race. It's not as quite as extreme.
It's 500, actually, not 400. 500 laps.
Oh, then J-Ski had it wrong. I pulled up the I thought I pulled it off of, I need to update the article. I thought I pulled it
usually 500 at this track.
It is usually 500, but I thought it was interesting that it was listed on the sheet. I tell you what, you go on with the list here. I'm going to NASCAR's media page and seeing if I'm smoking crack, Sean.
Yeah, just to make. Oh, actually, wait. They made it 400.
See, I'm not smoking crack.
Okay, you are. You aren't.
I went and looked because I was like, I guess we made Martinsville 400, and I was like, do I remember hearing about that? Because I probably about it. I was like, I think the fall race is 500 and the spring race is 400.
I think that was a recent change that they enacted. I'm not used to that right there.
It's because it's always Martinsville were always 500 laps.
Yeah. Either way, the point still stands. There's a lot of laps that are able to lead that are up for grabs for fastest laps and for leading. So you're going to want to get those dominators in.
Even if you lead 40 laps, that's 10 bonus points. That means the driver has to move up 10 spots for it to even be equal, right? I don't know about you, Sean, but to me that seems extreme because 40 laps, in the last race, we had 6 guys lead 40 laps. So that's pretty significant. Now, to your point, Denny Hamlin dwarfed all that, but he was really the outlier, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And the other thing is that there are going to be some place differential opportunities, but you got to be careful and pick and choose which ones to go after, because while some drivers may look like they might have a lot of upside and may have a lot of potential movement, it may just be, you want to hope that it's because they messed up on their qualifying run and not because of the car being legitimately that slow. Because when the car is legitimately that slow, that is like a trap right there for just picking a driver, and then you're not going to end up scoring much points throughout the day unless it's a wreck fest.
We have seen drivers qualify okay, do illegal adjustments or unapproved adjustments, whatever you want to call it, go to the back of the field. We've taken this question numerous times the last couple of years where we have moved off a anchor, if you will, right? Because we're fearful of, well, look, you're going to lose the potential. Like, yeah, they were starting 27th, moving back to 37th isn't the end of the world, except now they're in the lion's den. Within about 20 laps, the leader's going to be on the tail end of that field. And if that driver starting at the tail end of the field can't move up 6, 7, 8, 9 spots like that, they're within the first 30 laps, they're in harm's way of being lapped, which doesn't mean the race is over. But now that changes, you brought this up before, now that changes pit strategy. Now they have to do something outside of driving fast to get back on the lead lap, get back into contention.
Exactly. There's just a lot of elements here that could swing this race in all sorts of different directions. And as far as DFS choice is concerned, you have to be wary about as much of the factors as possible and make smart choices about it accordingly. Now, we're going to help with that with our content over for this week. But overall, though, what's still going to matter is you being in the Discord chats in order to see what's going on, if there's any news that comes up, and just really taking in all the race conditions. That's going to matter a lot this week.
And you said it. I mentioned in the article too. We're going to have to be laser focused for our punt options and our value plays and our place differential. We can't just take a swing at someone because they're starting near the back. That's going to be a pitfall of some. And it's going to be tempting because of some of the pricing, but we got to be careful. And I found this out, Sean. Did you know out of the last 6 races, there's only 2 drivers that have 6 top 10s? Because I went 6 races because that's what this new car is, right?
I did read up about that, actually. And did you know, there too, you probably do, that they're both from the same organization?
Shocker!
Whoa! We'll get into that here in a little bit because we happen to have both of these drivers within our driver choices this week.
That's right. And hey, if you like this content here and you want more in depth, I do have an overview article. Sean has an in-depth NASCAR article. Sometimes we flip-flop. We also have cheat sheets. DFS Marlin's helping us out on that. He's posting ownership. He threw out some truck ownership. It really helped me out. Mark, if you're watching this, I can't thank you enough because I'm still struggling with how you're coming up with the numbers. I need to sit down with you, and I'm not dumb with math. I mean, I took calculus in high school, but for some reason I'm struggling to grasp. But we have all that there. And if you like all that, head over to fantasyguru.com. Click the subscribe button. Check out what packages are there for you. We got our March Madness on discount. We've got the MVP Platinum all-in on discount. That gets you 12 months for $80. The March Madness guy is discounted to $39.99, $40. Look, there's going to be tons of betting there. And then Ray Flowers and the Oracle have the MLB Draft Guide. Spring training's here, folks. It may not feel like it, but spring training's here. We got baseball coming up like this week, I believe, or next week.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of a few more days, and then we're going to be swinging for the fences, trying to win money with MLB right there.
That's right. So please check all of that out. You can find all our DFS picks there. That gives you access to the Discord channel that Sean was talking about. You can ask us direct questions. People ask us about their lineups, all those sorts of things. I'm more than willing to discuss. Tag me. I'm more than willing to discuss any and all things racing. So give us a shout out or check us out there at fantasyguru.com. Give us a shout out on the Discord channel. Let us know you joined. And hey, let's have some fun making some money. That's what this is about.
Yeah, that's all what it is about. So before we get into our driver picks, let's lay the stage and get into the notables and the part-timers that are in for this week's slates of races here. How about you start us off with the trucks there, Rich?
Yes, sir. So in the trucks, this one, I'm excited about this one, Sean. Lawless Allen is going to be driving the number 1 Tricon machine. Cody Dennison and the Rome brothers, number 2. William Byron getting a little extra seat time in the Spire 07. Corey Day, the young rookie who has been impressive, he will be back in the number 7 Spire truck. Number 22 will be driven by Alan Waller. He's another Rome Brothers driver. The 44 will be Matt Gould. Or is it Gold? Nice Motorsports. I'm going to have to look that one up, Sean. 66 will be Luke Baldwin in Thor Sport instead of, I believe that's normally Luke Fenhouse last couple weeks. Yep. Ryan Roulette will be running for Freedom Racing Enterprises in the number 67. And Patrick Starpoli will be driving for Cook Racing Technologies in the number 84 truck.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting list, all things considered there. Look, getting into the Xfinity series, though, we got a very interesting list here, too. So we have Carson Ware in the number 07 for SS Greenlight Racing. Corey Day is doing double duty by driving the number 17 car for Hendrick Motorsports. Eric Almirola is back in the number 19 for Joe Gibbs. That's going to be one to watch because he won the last 2 Martinsville races.
Dominated them.
Patrick Starpoli is another driver doing double duty as he's driving the number 24 for Sam Hunt Racing. Greg Van Alst is back in the number 35 for Joey Gates Motorsports. Brad Perez is in the number 45 for Alpha Prime Racing. Mason Maggio is in the second Joey Gates Motorsports entry, the 53. Tyler Tomasi is in the number 66 for MBI, Motorsports Business Management. That's the Timmy Hill team right there. Thomas Annunziata is in the number 70 for Cope Family Racing. Dawson Cram is back again in the number 74 for Mike Harmon Racing. And then we have Myatt Snyder back in the 91 for DGM Racing.
At the Cup level, we got Burt Myers in number 50, Team Amerivet, and Casey Mears returns, driving the number 66 for Garage 66. I do want to throw it out there before I jinx him, though, Sean. I have always liked Lawless Allen's speed. He overdrives the car and the equipment half the time. He will outperform where you think he will, or he will wreck. I am really curious to see what he looks like in this number 1 truck this week.
Yeah, for Tricon, that's going to be very interesting because we've seen that number 1 truck have some really good speed at times.
Yes, and it's been very hit or miss with driver, and they actually have a driver in there this week with quite a bit of truck experience, a guy who's had, I mean, like I said, his claim to fame is probably the fist fight on the track, but for me, he's Mr. Jinx because every time I'm in on him, he crashes, and the times I tell you to fade him, he has one of his best runs. So I'm really curious to see how this works out.
So I guess what you should do is you should remain neutral, so that way people won't really know.
That's why I wanted to mention it here. If you followed my content, you probably are already aware how I feel about Lawless Allen. I don't need to say it, but I wanted to get it out there because I will not be shocked if that young man has a top 10 run in that truck. It will not shock me, Sean.
Oh, certainly. But let's get into our picks for the week here. Let's talk about our top price picks to watch here for DFS. And, you know what? I just say, while I could say that I could start with my own, we completely overlap here 1-to-1. Like, all 3 of our picks are the same thing here. So let's just discuss them all here. And to keep up with what we teased earlier about the only 2 drivers that finished top 10 in the last 6 races here, yeah, they're both here too. Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano for Team Penske. And then we both have William Byron here.
And I'll be frank, it was hard for me not to pick Larson here. Like, and it's more of a gut shot, Sean. It's not that it's one of his best tracks. He runs well here. But of all the Hendrick drivers, he has the least amount of top 10s. Or maybe Bowman does. But Chase Elliott, Byron both have more top 10s. I think they both have more top 5s. Larson does have a win. Hendrick in general dominates this track. This track might as and look, it means a lot to Hendrick because this is where the plane crash was, where they lost Randy Dorton and they lost Rick Hendrick's nieces and his brother and his son and shoot, there was some that worked for Chevy. There was a lot of lives lost, and they've run some special paint schemes to memorialize them and whatnot. But they have always, I mean, between Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson, they probably have enough grandfather clocks to fill my living room, to be honest with you. I mean, it's
definitely. And I was going to say, you talk about the Hendrick dominance here. Guess what? How many teams have won the spring Martinsville race? Oh, yeah, only one, Hendrick Motorsports. They've won each of the last 3 spring Martinsville races and have been undefeated since the next-gen car here in the spring at Martinsville.
There you go. That's a great stat. So, but Penske's been there, right? I mean, Blaney won this race in the fall. We said they're the only 2 drivers in all of NASCAR that have been top 10 every time we've come here in the new car are those 2, Blaney and Logano. And this is, look, Denny Hamlin runs really well here. He considers this a home track of sorts because he's raced the modifieds, way back in the day. So there's a lot of reasons to like multiple teams, but it's hard for me to get away from those 3, but I got to mention Kyle Larson. He was an honorable mention, and I can't deny it, Sean. We may see practice, and I may turn the page here because I just feel like this is Kyle Larson's race to win, and I don't know why I feel that way.
Practice and qualifying are going to be sure to swing a lot of our picks that we make on this podcast today. Just throwing it out there. So whatever we say now, that could get all thrown out the window come Saturday when practice and qualifying end up happening.
Which we tell that in the articles in Discord. It's not like we throw you for a loop and just guess here today. We dig a lot of digging. We have things narrowed down, and then we see qualifying and practice, and we kind of focus in a little more. So I just watch for Kyle Larson, I guess, is where I'm at.
Yeah, definitely. I think really the 2 teams that we're going to need to watch this week are Penske and Hendrick, really. I think they're the teams to watch more than any other. And
although the way Hamlin ran in the fall race, though, Sean, I mean, because Truex qualified the pole, I mean, where would you put Gibbs? Right behind them, like they're 1A, 1B, and Gibbs is 2 or 1C?
Yeah, I'd say it depends on the driver there overall. Now, I think Christopher Bell and Denny Hamlin are the top 2 drivers from this team overall. Chase Briscoe, he's been good here outside of Gibbs equipment. But he's still a bit of a wild card, still trying to find his footing there, too. So I do want to see a little bit more data on him this weekend before I lock it in. But he is somebody that I am going to keep in the back of my mind.
I was going to say, I've got a little flag on Briscoe, man. I really do. And I can't deny, while Hamlin didn't win, coming back from that far to 5th, I'm with you. I think it's Penske Hendrick, but I got to believe Joe Gibbs. To your point, depending on the driver, Joe Gibbs is not far behind.
I'm just going to say it, though, but Ty Gibbs is a no-go this weekend.
I agree. I agree. I tell you what, I am curious to see how RFK bounces back because they did run well in both races here last year, including Brad leading a ton of laps. I want to say one of the races he led 170 laps. Yeah. So, I'm really curious because they've been off to a kind of sluggish start, as you pointed out. So I'm very curious, but I'm with you. I think it's the other person I'm really interested in because of the ties is, we'll get to him, is the Wood brothers.
Yeah. And there's another point that I want to make pretty soon about RFK but I think I want to save it for when we mention our mid-tier picks. Here,
all right. Teaser. So we overlap in all the big guns. Blaney is the most expensive. Logano, I think, is underpriced.
I agree, especially for a driver that's very likely to finish top 10 at this track. Underpriced, I'd say. He should at least be in the 10K range for DraftKings, if you ask me.
I would agree. Dang it, Sean. We almost had a perfect overlap on our mid-tier, and I changed it.
Exactly. Yeah, so I guess we should get into that now. It wasn't going to be too much longer in order to tease that, but you have Austin Cindric, Josh Berry, and Bubba Wallace. I also have Josh Berry and Bubba Wallace, but where we differ here is that I also have Ryan Preece. And you remember that point I made just a minute ago about RFK's performance here, where I say this might be a track for them to watch? Last year, they did not have Ryan Preece with them. This year, they do.
I know.
This is a track that the Modified Racing Tour used to really race on a lot here. And you know who was very good in Modifieds? Ryan Preece. And let's not even forget, 2 years ago, he drove at Stewart Haas Racing Equipment and led 135 laps and had the car to beat, but just didn't win.
That's right. I forgot about that. So just to be transparent, I mulled between Cindric, Bubba Wallace, and Preece. And here was my logic. The pricing on Bubba, the way he's been running lately, he's been a good short track race driver over his course of his career. Josh Berry, because his background, this fits well for what they do. They've been running well. He was a lock-in for me. I'm lukewarm on Cindric. My lean on Cindric is Team Penske. That said, I would much rather save the money and go Ryan Preece than Austin Cindric as a general rule.
Oh, yeah, and let's not forget, Preece was driving in Stewart Haas Racing Equipment when he was having those previous starts. He's in RFK equipment, which really, as we're seeing now, is probably better than that Stewart Haas equipment.
I agree.
He's going to have this race circled as one of his best opportunities to win. I'm going to say both him and Josh Berry have this race circled right here.
I agree.
They both have a lot of experience on this track outside of NASCAR, so they're going to be the two that I'm going to really especially be curious about.
In fact, I want to change it. Get rid of Austin Cindric and put in Ryan Preece. That's my list.
Make it my. So you're saying you want it to take it to my list now?
I do. Because the more I look at the $8,500, Sean, the less I would have used Cindric.
Yeah. And that's just really, I'm going to say this about Cindric here, too. He's not the worst play in the world. He's actually an all right kind of play. Now, if you wanted to use him, I recommend him in FanDuel, particularly, where he is 7,200, where the price is definitely way more approachable. And that would be equivalent towards being like the low 7K range right there. Where he's below Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick and Kyle Busch even.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, so.
And I'm bummed here. You hate this next tier? I kind of love it, dude. I kind of love it.
Oh, yeah, the sleepers and bargains tier.
Boy, I could hear it in your voice even. I could hear it in your voice.
Not a fan of this tier this week because of all the drivers there that have such mixed history at Martinsville. It's not even funny. So picking drivers for this very last tier for me was a big challenge, to put it lightly, because I felt like no matter who I ended up picking, I was going to feel uncomfortable about it.
That's fair. I feel pretty comfortable with most of mine, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so not a real thrill about this, but just to give it a shot, what I ended up picking was Eric Jones, Shane Van Gisbergen, and then another split pick between DraftKings or FanDuel, with DraftKings for Todd Gilliland and FanDuel for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Now, Eric Jones, he's one of the few drivers that at least has done something consistent at this track in the next-gen car, which is score place differential points. 5 of the past 6 races, he's finished ahead of his starting position. Shane Van Gisbergen, he ended up placing 12th in the fall last year at Martinsville, and he now has experience at this track. And my belief is when SVG gets experience at particular tracks, he's going to be better at them the second go around, or be very close to his past performance at the very least. And I like that for the price. Now, as for my split pick, I like Todd Gilliland and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. about the same. Todd Gilliland, he regularly challenges for the top 20 at this track particularly. He has 3 finishes inside the top 20 overall. with 3 of them coming in the past 5 races. And then Ricky Stenhouse Jr., a lot like Eric Jones, he scored positive place differential in most of his starts in the next-gen car as well there too, Rich. So I like all 4 of those drivers. You have a bit of a different list than me, so go ahead and share what you got.
I'm all in on SVG, bro. At $5,900, he was one of the biggest place differentials in his race here. He ended up finishing 12th. He even ran in the top 10 at one point. I have maintained that this track, Miami's great for dirt racers. This track is good for road racers, in my opinion. We've seen Juan Pablo take to it well. Dinger struggled at first and has come around, has been very consistent lately. SVG took to it well. And in my opinion, Sean, I think it's because it reminds me, is it much different than running that long straightaway at Coda going in, or Sonoma and going into the hairpin? Is it really that much different at Martinsville with it being a flat track like that? So I think there's something to it. So I'm good using SVG at the 5,900. He is one of the guys, if it starts in the back, I have no problem taking that shot. Dinger's right there. I like SVG a little more. Dinger's numbers are definitely mixed. And then the last 2 guys, these are a little more gut shot calls. Carson Hocevar, he does well on road courses. He does well on the short tracks. He's shown speed all year. Look, I think at 6,600, a top 15 or top 18 is not unlikely. And shout out to Cole Custer at 6,300. He ran, again, Stuart Haas last year, ran well here. He's also run well here in Xfinity. So I'm not out on Cole Custer, and I think he might be a forgotten name this weekend.
Really, I think what I want to see with a lot of these drivers is just some numbers in order to help justify the choices overall here too, because I feel like I can never be fully sure of some of these drivers. Even the ones I mentioned, I'm still not 100% fully on board, but they're the ones that I'm most likely on board with. And as for AJ Allmendinger, I do have to mention that he is yet to score top 20 in the next gen car at this track, despite his road racing experience. So I'm still a little bit iffy on using him for sure this week until I see more.
Although 2 of those races, he had the speed, and if I remember correctly, he had some problems. There was one where I swear he was in the top 10 and ran into braking issues or a tire issue. I'll have to go back and look. But it's a fair complaint. Look, Dinger's also the guy that Tony Stewart was a dart without feathers here. So
interesting.
But I would say of all the tiers, this is the most dependent on qualifying and practice.
Oh, for sure. Especially with the fact that some of these drivers don't have a lot of experience at Martinsville. And I feel like that unless you pick up to the track right away, Martinsville is one of the hardest tracks in order to learn and get good with. So usually most of the time we see a lot of rookie drivers or drivers that maybe only have like 1 or 2 years of Cup experience really struggle at this place until after they get a few starts under their belt here too.
I agree. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Like I said, the one I'm really interested in is SVG. I thought he showed out well last year.
I think so too. He's on my list as well. He's one of the few that I think could take to this place. So we'll see how
that's
it
one of
shakes
the
out.
few that's one of the few we overlap on that tier. It's the only one we overlap on that tier. And I do like your Jones call, by the way. I just don't want to jinx him.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I will also mention this, that Legacy, the soccer club, has gotten a little bit more speed out of this year too. So something to also keep in mind and watch as well. Maybe we're going to start calling them the club if they keep it up.
If they keep running the way they are, they definitely are deserving of the club and not the soccer club. I will give you that.
Man. All right.
Jimmy created that monster. He's the one that wanted to name it like a soccer team. So
let's get into our core 4s here. So I have my DFS core 4 overall. It is with Ryan Blaney, 11,200 on DraftKings and 14,000 on FanDuel. He's the most expensive driver on both sites. I have Josh Berry at 8,100 on DraftKings and 8,500 on FanDuel. Ryan Preece at 7,500 on DraftKings and 8,200 on FanDuel. And then Bubba Wallace at 7,200 on DraftKings and 8,000 on FanDuel.
He's so underpriced.
Yeah.
Man. All right. So I went a little different approach. I kind of like your base there, Sean. I went a little cheaper so I could go a little higher up. I went Blaney at the 11.2, Josh Berry at 8,100. I did go SVG at 5,900. I'm kind of all in, like I said. The last spot, I picked Logano because he's underpriced and the numbers support the pick. That said, if I have the money, I'd kind of like to go Larson here, Sean, even though I have Byron listed in my group up above.
I don't mind that call out. I think Larson and Byron are both going to be in play this week overall. So,
I agree. Yeah. I mean, if I could find a way to get Blaney, Byron, and Larson in a lineup, I would probably do it. The problem is, I think you'd have to go SVG and still find someone around under 6,000.
Yeah, actually, when you plug all three of the drivers into DraftKings, it gets the average remaining for player at 5,800. So that's at Justin Haley and below.
Well, I could. I mean, if I could go SVG, Justin Haley, and somebody cheaper, I guess. That's playing with fire, folks. I don't think I would recommend a lineup like that.
Now, if you were to do that on FanDuel, it's a little more friendlier price-wise because, well, actually, no, not. It's 4,750 left for average. So that gets you about between Zane Smith and Eric Jones, right within that.
Well, there we go. We'll get Eric Jones and Zane Smith for the last two spots.
Yeah, and if you pick Zane Smith, that gets you with 5,000. So you can actually go up to McDowell or Eric Jones as your highest too for the last call there.
Yeah, I'd like your Eric Jones call there. I'd be Eric Jones on that one. I could do that. And to be fair, I don't know if that's the right move, Sean. But as we sit today, my three favorites to win are, and we'll cover them in the bets, but they are Blaney, Larson, Byron.
Yeah. Well, by covering them, you mean we just named them there. Let's get our betting scores out of the way.
Guys.
So
I wasn't even looking. I'm just looking at my head. I'm looking up, thinking to myself, and my apologies. But Jesus, Sean, could we overlap any more, bro?
I mean, really, Blaney, Larson, Byron, those are our three right there that we all share. I'm on Logano to win a little bit more at plus 900, and you have Hamlin. And you said you could go Joey here too. I think Joey has the better shot in order to win compared to Hamlin because Hamlin has been a little bit more. He's been good and consistent, but I think Logano's been a little bit closer in the spring compared to Hamlin overall.
I think Logano's had more overall speed too. I would agree with you there. It's more of, I think I got enamored with going back and going, crap, Hamlin had that run. It's hard for me because if you would have asked me to in the old car, Sean, Hamlin was almost always one of my favorites, even though Hendrick dominated even in the old car. He's run so well here, and he talks about he likes running here. This is he grew up cutting his teeth racing at places like this.
Yeah, he's got that short track background to him, so it helps him with tracks like these.
And he's raced modifieds like Priest, like Brad here at Martinsville. He's done it, So, oh, geez. And we overlap on our other bets, too. I am so shocked.
Yeah, we do overlap here on a couple of things there. Now, you named the Alex Bowman top 10 there for plus 100. I'm not actually on Alex Bowman because I think it's going to be a little bit harder for him to get a top 10 this week. But I think it's still in play. I just don't love the call.
The fact that you don't love the call and the fact that it's only plus 100, I would be totally comfortable fading it at this point. Dead serious. If you were more comfortable with it, Sean, because you're only getting even money. So I would rather see qualifying in practice. And even if he qualifies in the top 10, I don't know that his odds probably go from plus 100 to minus 110. So it's a difference of $10 in payment, right? Or if you bet 100, you get 90 instead of 100 back. So
yeah, so because I also looked at the numbers there. He's only raced 5 next-gen races at Martinsville. He's only finished in the top 10 entirely one time, and that was it.
Oh.
Not bringing a lot of confidence right there.
No, now you've talked me out of it. I want to fade. I'm fading Alex Bowman, Sean. You convinced me. I'm fading it.
Yeah. I just don't see it. He might have the speed. I don't know, but I'd rather wait until qualifying.
Sean, if I was that convinced on it, I would argue with you. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm fading.
But your other one that you named here, Josh Berry at top 10 at plus 110, I would take that bet, though, especially with the speed that Wood Brothers has been putting on recently, and this being at such a good track for Josh Berry outside of Cup. I mean, he's in better equipment now, you can argue, so I think he's going to make a serious run for that, too, especially with how he's been running this season there. I take that one.
And I'll let people know, a lot of times I am looking at momentum. There's something to be said about if you've been fast lately. That's where Bowman came from. Barry's been fast lately, and Barry also has the track credence to go with it.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see there, too. Now, you named Cole Custer for a top 10 there at plus 450. That's another one where I'm like, even despite the history, I want to see how the car does before I lock that in.
That is a gut shot. I thought the odds seemed slightly off call. All right. That is not a bet that I would go all in on or max units. That is more of take a half unit because you're getting 4.5 times your money and throw it on there. Does that make sense?
No, that's valid enough for that reason. I'm just personally not going to do it. But I don't think it's impossible, though. I don't think it's impossible either.
And I don't disagree with you. I'd really like to see it. Here's my logic. Stuart Haas was fairly fast here last year. We mentioned Priest, Barry, and Custer. Custer's with Haas again. So the reason I'm kind of leaning this way is it's the only car. And while Cole Custer hasn't been impressive, they haven't been as bad as I thought they would be, if I'm being completely frank. So again, it's more of, I like to have one kind of longer shot for a top 10. I seem to have decent success, not always. Zane Smith would have been the call last week, right? You called out that we would have missed by one. So I'm glad I didn't. But honestly, Sean, I was really hoping for more like plus 600 for Custer. But I wouldn't be – this is not an early line I would chase. I would chase Barry right now. I don't think I would wait on Josh Berry.
Yeah. So let me name my other bets real quick there. I do have top 10 bets on Bubba Wallace and Ryan Preece in particular to finish top 10. Bubba's actually finished top 10 a couple of times at this track before. Looking back towards the last 6 races, he has 3 top 10 finishes. And I think that he can very likely, with the speed he's showing now, get that again this week. And Ryan Preece, as mentioned, he's with RFK now. This is a great track for him. One of his very best. He's yet to finish outside the top 15 in the next gen car. And even better equipment now. I definitely would take a shot at that. And then as for my last 2 bets, I have 2 head-to-head bets here too. I have Ross Chastain versus Kyle Busch. I'm picking Chastain to win that matchup. He's at minus 125. And then I have Christopher Bell versus Chase Briscoe. I'm going to say that I'm willing to take a shot on Briscoe in order to win that matchup. And he's at minus 105, but if you parlay the 2 head-to-head bets together, you'll get odds of plus 251 for both of them.
I'm really shocked that the Vegas books have Briscoe favored over Bell.
Well, actually, Bell is favored over Briscoe. He's at minus 125.
So you're going to give me minus 25 and then give me minus money for the other guy? Shame on you, Vegas books. Shame, shame, shame. It should at least be plus 100. Shame on you.
This is why I say that if you wanted to parlay them together, it's not a bad call because I like those matchups enough that in those favors, especially the Chastain matchup. Like, my goodness, if you've seen how I feel like Kyle Busch has been cursed at this track ever since in the next gen car.
It has not been good for Kyle. I want to be excited for Kyle, but RCR has not been good here. It has not gone well for Kyle in this car, even with Gibbs.
Yeah, the 2 starts he had with Gibbs at this track were both not good either.
Right. So I'm with you there. I like those calls. Shame on you're going to tell me the underdog is minus money. Go F off. Like, what's the point of having an underdog and overdog? Like, that's crap.
This is why I say that if you do like the matchups enough, parlaying them is not a bad call because
it's not a bad call.
Odds for it.
I still want to slap somebody in Vegas. Fuckers.
If you do, you should get video footage of that.
If I do it, I'm going to do it with my tallywhacker and then get charged with sexual assault or something because it's that stupid. the whole idea of having odds and stuff like that is a balance, right? And so I just like, okay, Ross Chastain's minus 125. Was Kyle Busch minus 105?
Let me look back here because I'll bring this right up here. Yeah, Kyle was at minus 105. Ross is at minus 125.
No way I'm betting to lose money on Kyle beating somebody head-to-head at this track. It would have to be like Justin Haley or something.
There's a bunch of other matchups here too, but I'm not sure if I'd lock in any of the other ones to be sure because I think they're close to call. Sean,
this is a good group you have right here. I think these are two phenomenal calls, and I love the idea of parlaying for 2.5 to 1. Love it. I think it's brilliant, honestly. I'm not just blowing smoke at you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I don't have any other bets. I will this weekend. Like I said, the weekend got away from me, so I apologize. The only bets I had were my article or on the podcast. Shout out to OGB for listening to both because he made those bets and cashed. But hat tip to you, Sean, for hitting like you did. But I'm excited to go short tracking. I'm just hoping and praying it's not a crap show, Sean. I wish they were using the other tire, but they're not. So,
well, we'll see how it all shakes out this weekend, and we'll react to it appropriately for next week. So. If it's good, we'll be happy about it. If it's bad, we're just going to be bummed out and be like, NASCAR's ruined short track racing again.
Again! Gosh darn it, again! Get off my lawn! All right. Well, on behalf of Sean Engel, I am Rich Maletto. You can not follow me on X. That would be ideal. But please do follow Sean on X at SeanE247. His content is phenomenal. You get access to all our stuff, this podcast included, the articles, any and all above at fantasyguru.com. We are supported by the Elite Plus Network. Thank you to all of them. On behalf of Sean and myself, it's as fun. As always, it's been fun here on the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. Until next time.
And there's one other thing that we have to end it off on here.
My bad.
Because you know what? For one more time, let's do an encore. Come up, take it away, Dan.
Short track racing.
Exactly. It's short track racing. Now let's go and get them.
Let's get after it.
See you all next week.